guest is going to be Derek Condit. He is the bee whisperer. Now, of course, I might be the beer whisperer. Who knows? But now he doesn't call himself the bee whisperer. I did. I mean, it's like, hey, that's a good hook. Let's just call somebody a bee whisperer, and and talk about bees tonight. It's a total different subject from all the crap that's going on in the world. And so let's go ahead and ring him on up. There's our. Hello, Derek. Can you see me now?
I can, Daniel. And can you see me yet?
Absolutely. You're in the screen.
Great. Happy to be here too. Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, welcome to the Edge Television broadcast. Now, Derek, we are fellow beekeepers.
Oh, fantastic. I was not aware of that.
So we're going to be talking about the bee tonight. And I got to, first off, people got to quit hating on the bee. I mean, that's the one thing I know. But hey, before we get started, why don't you introduce yourself to the Edge broadcast audience there, Derek?
Oh, sure. So my name is Derek Condit. I'm also known as the Shungite beekeeper. So we're actually located up here in Mount Vernon, Washington State. And just as the name tells you, we're into Shungite, the mineral, and we use it to help save the bees. So that's what we're all about. And we're all about spreading that message and helping other beekeepers worldwide do that. Of course, to help the combat the colony collapse disorder that's around the planet.
Mm-hmm. Well, I tell you what, I've had a few colonies collapse on my own. Seems like every winter there's a whole lot of collapsing going on. Hey, well, I actually introduced you as the bee whisperer. Now, you don't really say you are, but hey, I thought that's a great because I never met one, so I might just call you the bee whisperer.
Oh, no, actually, well, so I'm not sure how, let's say, woohoo you want to get here, Daniel, but I'm somewhat that because I do communicate with the bees on different levels, and they communicate with us on many levels as well. But I am also what's called an intuitive or communicator. So no, we're all so connected that I think we're all bee whisperers to one degree or another.
Well, what would the world be, Derek, if there weren't any bees? Let's start with that.
Oh, sure. Well, actually, you can, we can thank bees for about a third of all of the food that we eat, because, of course, from pollination and different things like that, not just us, but animals as well. And then the plants. So it's not just humans that can really appreciate and should thank the bees, but again, the whole biome, everything that lives on the planet because of what they do and how well they do it. And it's not just the bees or let's say their pollination, but they make the medicinal products like organic honeys that are immune boosting, antimicrobial, antiseptic, antibiotics. So there's lots of benefits to the bee products, and they're just beneficial in so many ways. And that's fantastic that you're a beekeeper as well.
Mm-hmm. Is there any other insect that we can get food from?
Not like a bee. And so we're talking about specifically honeybees here, because of course there's a couple hundred different types of bees, mason bees or carpenter bees that don't produce honey. But no, as far as insects wise, nothing that an insect makes an abundance of to where a human can take a portion of it to where it won't be harmful for the bees, which is kind of where we come from, being organic or treatment-free beekeepers. Mm-hmm. We see it as being all about the bees first, and then after that we move on. But yeah, so there's.
Okay, so you're in Washington State?
Correct, Washington State.
Okay, it seems to me that you guys might be one of the first to be affected by the killer hornets if they come over there, or if they come over here. Is that right?
Yeah, and actually they found a couple of them up here already, but not too many. And I've lost beehives or bee colonies to wasp and or hornet attacks myself. I think they're calling them murder hornets or something like that. And they are pretty big, but they're not in abundance up here yet. So I talked to other beekeepers. They're not a huge issue. Yes, a few have been found, and they're pretty large, I got to admit. But they're not a big problem yet. So let's hope it stays that way.
They're not a problem yet. Sounds like they might gather their forces. But hey, I do know this, that the honeybees, where they have been attacked by a murder hornet, they swarm the murder hornet and create, the way they kill it is they create a heat area around the hornet They don't. I don't know. They might try to bite them too, but they generally swarm them and create to get to a certain temperature, and that temperature that they kill the murder hornet is in within 1 degree of what will kill the bees.
Isn't that phenomenal? I've actually had that experience where a mouse got into one of our beehives, and then the bees swarmed it, did just what you're saying. Thousands of bees will go around the house, and in this case, a mouse they can sting, where a hornet they have a little more trouble. But they'll do just what you said. They'll cook it within that degree. It's pretty incredible. And while they're doing that, I'm not sure if that was mentioned in the study maybe you saw, but they'll actually rotate. The bees will rotate in a little toroidal or donut energy field from the inside out, so that the ones in the inside don't get too hot themselves, but yet the energy stays on the culprit in the middle, we can say.
Absolutely. Now there is something I don't know if you've seen them on your beehives, but I saw an assassin bug several times. Are you aware of the assassin bug? Do you ever have them out there?
Assassin bugs. I'm thinking we may call them potato bugs, little pinchers on the end of them.
Well, this thing's about that big.
Oh, nope.
And this son of a, can I say bitch on this show? I don't know. This thing sits on on the back of the beehive and just wait for a little bee come by and grab that thing and eat it. And I've smashed a couple of them. And now, so every insect doesn't get a pass from the old cowboy, okay? If that insect don't bother me or mine, then I'm going to leave them alone. But if they're going to assassinate some of my bees, we going at it.
Yeah, no, I feel you on that one. And I'll even put up, because, I appreciate all life, of course, but if they're taking out beehives and things like that, I'm not a big fan of the wasps or hornets like we were talking about before. So there are wasp or hornet traps you can put up that won't lure bees in and things, but that's pretty scary, talking about a big old assassin bug on the back of your hive.
Mm-hmm. Of course, there's always a spider trying to grab one too. So bees are under attack. I mean, of course, there's the CC colony collapse disorder, but then man, you got mites going on, you've got disease going on, you got assassin bugs and spiders. These guys, we got to help them out, Derek. We got to help them out. How are we going to do that? How are we going to help the bee?
Sure, yeah, and that's exactly what we got into, Daniel, is that we're all about that, helping the bees, and because we are pro anti-chemical or anti-treatment, sometimes it's called, we try and avoid, because of course, if we're taking honey from the honey bees to consume ourselves, it would be beneficial not to have the chemicals in it or pest treatments that often beekeepers are led to believe they need to use. Well, and that's for treating symptoms of what's called, as you mentioned, colony collapse disorder, CCD. And that's a worldwide effect that's happening to bees. So I'll kind of go quickly over it for those listening that don't know. But basically, colony collapse disorder is when your bees, you wake up in the morning, they'll fly out to the local crops and fields and pollinate and get their nectar and pollen, and then just not return to the hive. What you'll do is wake up in the morning, you'll see no bees. It's not that there's dead bees under it, they'll just be missing. And they'll generalize that as colony collapse disorder. And there's a couple of root causes for it. One being chemicals, of course, things like glyphosate and Roundup in the crops, but also frequencies. So EMF frequencies, cell phone signals, Wi-Fi. So bees, birds, fish fly by these energy lines, navigation lines, we call them ley lines, different energy lines or highways. And of course, with all this high EMF in our environment now, it's difficult. It confuses them. They get lost. And so the bees don't make it all the way home at night. And often it gets too cold at night from their hive and from their other bees. So they freeze, and the bees, and that's called colony collapse disorder. So what we did was we actually learned about this unique mineral called Shungite, and it's found in one spot in Russia, Karelia, Russia, up near the Finland border. There's a couple of thought systems behind it, but one of them is it was a meteorite some couple billion years ago. And that's thought of by the scientists, it originated there because of the C60 or carbon molecule that's within it. And what that molecule does is has an effect among other things, but frequencies and radiations and toxins. So long story short, we take this Shungite mineral, which is black, take the powder, we blend it in the paint, and then paint the exterior of the beehive. And I'm an ex-military guy myself, so we call these things Faraday cages in the military. And so when the bees are home in their now Faraday cage type beehive, they're at that approximately 50% of the time safe or attenuated from the frequency. So they heal themselves. And we haven't had colony collapse disorder losses since 2016 when we started this, Daniel. And our bees have done nothing but flourish. And then we've shared this information worldwide so that others can benefit. And we've used it in many other ways, but that's how we started with it.
Okay, and for those of you just joining us on our Skype line, we have Derek Condit. I call him the Bee Whisperer. Some of you might say, hey, I thought we were going to talk about America going to blow up in a race war. No, tonight we're getting away from that. No Cooties 19, no blow American cities. We're talking about something that's real, and that's the bee. And Derek, we got to love the bee. Got a lot of questions coming in for you already. So, by the way, Australian Ben, welcome to the chat. Just seen you log in. All right, here's a question for you. Derek says, is there any other species of bees that will continue to live after they deploy their stingers?
Not after they deploy their stingers, but not all bees sting. So yes, honeybees sting, and they will lose. They don't want to sting you, by the way. So if you get stung by a bee, you've gotten in its way, you've interrupted it, not knowingly usually, or stepped on it or something like that, because they know it's gonna be a big loss when they sting. So they don't technically want to do that, just so you know. But when it happens, yes, they do pass. But all the other bees, so let's talk mason bees or carpenter bees, which actually pollinate 400% better than a honeybee, they don't sting at all. They just have little bites, kind of like a fly. So only the honeybees sting, but yes, when they sting, unless there's some new type that I'm not aware of, but their stingers do remove from their bodies and they do pass from that. But not all, again, sand bees, many of them just bite rather than sting, so it wouldn't have the same effect.
I'll tell you what, there's one bee I can't stand. That's something we got here in Indiana. Maybe you have them out there called the carpenter bee. These some bitches, man, they're drilling into my deck roof, and anywhere that I've got wood, they think that they can just burrow right in there and make a home and dig in there. I don't know where they're going, what they're doing in there. Nobody invited them. I mean, they're not paying rent. Is there any other use for the carpenter bee?
Well, I can tell you, so on the carpenter bee, again, what they do, and they're also, so they mix the names carpenter and or mason bee. They're actually really good pollinators. 2 carpenter bees can pollinate an entire fruit tree with hundreds of blossoms on it. But what they're doing in the eaves of your house or your fence post, and then I'll tell you a way to maybe fix that, is they're drilling a little hole about the exact diameter of a pencil. And what they're doing in there is laying a little egg and then building, hence their name, a wall, a mason wall out of pollen, nectar, and different debris, leaving the egg with a little pollen ball. So next spring, when that egg hatches, it has a little bit of food, it chews its way through the little room. And so I said about a pencil length, there's a bunch of these little rooms with eggs in them that the carpenter bees or mason bees will, pop out of next spring once it reaches about 55 degrees. And then, so a way to maybe encourage them to stop eating up your house or your eaves or things like that, you can go to any hardware store, Home Depot, or whatnot. You're going to find what look like bird houses. For those that are watching video here, so I'm showing my hands about 6 inches tall. They look like they have little tubes in them made out of bamboo. So those are actually carpenter or mason bee houses. And sometimes they'll be in the birdhouse section. Just take that little guy, nail it up to your backyard fence about chest or head height, put some mud under it or keep the ground moist. Think mason bee, they take that mud. Now you've encouraged them to move there, and that's where they'll do it. So they'll actually leave the ease of your house, give them an easier place to move, and that's one way to get rid of them.
So them carpenter bees are still in my wood.
They will until they emerge next spring.
What if I put some putty in there and block that hole?
You're going to stop the carpenter bee from laying the next set of eggs, but next spring, when those emerge, they're going to chew their way right out of it, depending on what you use to plug that hole, of course. So basically little eggs that will wait till that 55-degree temperature mark, which is why some people actually order the eggs, keep them in their vegetable drawer of their fridge, believe it or not, and then put them in these little houses in the spring to pollinate their gardens and farms and things.
Well, I'll be. All right, let's get to this one here. Dale Santiago says, Derek, are wasp and hornets beneficial for anything?
Well, they're actually meat eaters, of course, so they're not doing much pollinating. Actually, they eat bees. So as far as beneficial, I guess that's all your perspective. But as far as to humans, not a whole heck of a lot as far as I can tell. I don't know anything about the poison being extracted or used to make anything out of or anything like that. So unfortunately, no, other than being another, life form, I don't know of any human benefit, of course.
Uh, Seems like I think I watched an interview with you, and I think you were discussing uh, Shungite, and it's some relative of it or extraction of it that is um, being used in Fukushima to absorb.
Sure. Yeah, I can tell you a little bit about that.
Well,
Mhm.
I want you to, but so I'm thinking, and I'm thinking, oh no, wait a minute, man, this isn't right. So I had to go check you, okay? And because we've had people on this show, and there's this other kind of thing similar to shungite called orgone, and so I'm thinking. This sounds suspiciously like orgone, which is supposed to protect people from aliens. And so I wanted to know. I'm not joking, man. You can buy an orgone blaster, and what you do is you put orgone in water, put it in a super soaker, and then so when the like the alien comes to get you. So I did look that up. But tell us a little bit about what it's doing out there at Fukushima.
Sure. So actually, there's been scientific studies done on this. So everything I'm going to talk about right now is science, not me in my garage coming back writing a report about telling you about it. And these studies are available on our various websites as well for those that want to view the science of it. So shungite actually has an effect on not just free radicals, but rad particles, radiation particles, which of course is what's in Fukushima. So they're actually we had a couple individuals last year, I believe it was, go to Fukushima themselves and get shungite in the province, I'm not the county or whatever it's called of Fukushima with that. But no, there are scientists making now an artificial shungite. So because it would be cheaper that way than the actual shungite, to put it in there to attenuate the rad or radiation particles. They're also spreading this same shungite powder in fields that have been GMO fields, genetically modified, to remove the glyphosate or Roundup weed killer. It has an effect on toxins and free radicals. Shungite does. So they also, Daniel, again, scientists, I want to make that clear, not me with my pet rats. And what I'm getting at here is scientists have fed shungite powder to rats and tripled their lifespan. Rats typically die of cancer, for those that don't know, unless you have a snake and you bought it to feed for that or something. But that's what happens to rats generally. They actually had to end the life of the rats early, after 3 years, to end the study. Scientists have also fed shungite powder to cattle, to chickens, to have an effect on the think the issues or the infection in the cow's milk and udders, and then the eggs and different things like that. So no, they've done many studies with it on many different items, animals, and different ways of using it.
Mm. Well, that's interesting. All right, got another question for you. It says, what is the purpose of the mud dauber? Another annoyance to a homeowner around doors and windows.
Oh, the mud. I'm trying to think of those things are known by different names. So I'm wondering what maybe I know it as.
Mm-hmm.
Is it the? I'm wondering if they're talking about the little guy that actually builds like a little mud cave up
Yeah,
in the
right. It
nooks.
kind of builds it up. You can see them.
Yeah, I thought that might be them. So again, not real beneficial. Just all they're going to do is pull moisture out of the seams of your window and cause issues there. But not a whole lot of benefit, to be honest. There, they do pollinate some, but not as well as the mason bees or carpenter bees.
What about chemtrails? Are they affecting the bees?
They are, because there's lots of chemicals and toxins and metals in these things they're calling chemtrails, and that is happening. So yes, it affects the bees because it's in their environment, but not just the bees, the honey the bees are making that that we're consuming as individuals. So it comes all the way through the cycle. And yes, there are toxins and different metals, barium, strontium, all types of things that are affecting the bees. Mm-hmm. And then they encourage us to put little acid strips and things like that in the beehives to take care of mites that I heard you mention earlier. When you have shungite and you have healthy bees that aren't sickened or weakened by compromised immune systems from frequencies and chemicals, well, they heal themselves and get rid of their own mites. So we don't even treat for mites or any other type of disease in the shungite beehives. And then they're healthier and able to more resist the chemtrails and other toxins that they encounter. But it is an issue for them.
Let me ask you about the, I don't know what it's called. It's a beehive that is, I think it's called a flow hive from Australia. When I look at that, I say, wow, that looks good. If you don't know anything about bees and you have this idea that you can turn a switch and you don't never have to deal with a bee in your life, to me, it's misguided because you still have to maintain the bees. You got to work them. You got to help them. Basically, I don't know if you can help them. But what's your idea on the flow hive from Australia?
Sure. No, I'm very familiar with those, and I've seen them and messed around with them. Let's say because now I'm with you. I'm not a fan of them for a lot of reasons. It's not a instant. Oh, I now have a beehive that makes all my honey in just a tap. So think honey on tap, and that's kind of what they're eluding. These things are, but they're not. And by the way, they're made out of massive amounts of plastic and metals. Now, wood is okay in a beehive, but you don't want plastics and metals for lots of reasons. And yes, those are in there. And what they don't mention is that there's, again, I'm going to try and use my hands here for those watching, but there's the honeycomb that needs to be basically, think the top layer taken off so that you can extract the honey. Well, when this device, the flow hive, does that, and there's just an arm that you pull, it does slide a piece of metal over this. Well, there's no alarm system, Daniel, let me tell you, that tells the bees, hey, there's a big metal arm that's going to come through and swipe open this comb. So you're going to kill dozens, if not hundreds of bees each time you do that. And then, not to be too crude, but yes, the parts and pieces of these bees is now getting in your honey that you're now extracting out. And then you've added probably 10 times the work for the remaining bees to clean up the mess and repair the now damaged honeycomb. So there's so many issues wrong, and I'll just stop there because I could probably go in a half an hour about the negative aspects of those type of hives. But really, if you do beekeeping right, you don't even need a flow hive. You just let the bees do what they pretty much know what they're doing anyway for millions of years.
Yeah, well, I call that bee abuse, man. And I just saw I saw Raul Sanchez in the live chat say, "I try not to kill bees." And I certainly look, man. I feel guilty when I'm mowing the grass and I know there's a bee in front of me. I'm going 7 miles an hour. I can't stop. I know that one's going to get hit. I feel their pain, man.
Sure.
But in fact, in my neighborhood, ours is the only ground that has clover in it and dandelions. Everybody else in the damn neighborhood is used lawn treatment. Oh, they got the beautiful lawn. It just not good for bees, and nature itself. And so, they're kind of aggravating there. All right, let's get to a couple more questions here. This is, this is from our moderator, Jade. What is the benefit of royal jelly?
Actually, I'm not a big fan of promoting royal jelly because it is made by the bees to produce another queen or a multiple queen bees. So it takes a lot of time and energy for the bees to extract, and it's very harmful to get it out of there. So lots of damage on that. So I don't actually harvest that myself or use it, but it was seen for a long time through history and anything a bee makes is this, by the way, an immune booster. There's not just the beneficial probiotics, microbiotics, biome, and different things in the honey products, but the frequency. So we don't get too much into that, but literally the frequency behind the honey, and be it royal jelly or not, or just the honey, you can still benefit. So there's not a lot of benefits. It's more of hence the name. It gives a kind of a persona of being royal, better than this, that, and the other. But I'm not a big proponent of it.
See if I've missed anything. The sweet little bee makes royal jelly, propolis, pollen, honey. Is there anything else it makes?
Well, some beekeepers extract the pollen itself from their legs. So there's little doorways as the bees crawl through to take it in there. It'll strip it off so they eat the raw pollen as well that's off of the legs.
I've heard some people chew the propolis. That is the glue that they seal up the hive. Have you ever heard that? Do you do that?
No, I don't chew it or anything like that, but I do have it at times. So if it's made in abundance, they'll make the propolis for covering. So if you have a beehive with any metal showing on the inside, the bees will generate the propolis. Or in the instance of the mouse I was telling you about, where the bees got on it, after they passed the mouse on, they covered them with propolis. And that's just a bee glue, which is immune boosting, has all the good enzymes and all the beneficial molecules in it. So there's lots of uses for it, but we'll only extract it if there's something called a bee excluder that you'll put. So think like a mesh screen with spacing just such that all the bees can pass through but the queen. That way you don't get eggs mixed in with your other combs. And they'll sometimes put the propolis on that and we'll take it off. It's really a medicinal substance. Think putting on an open wound or boosting your immune system, something like that.
Can you see my background right now?
I can, but to me, again, it's all green though.
Okay. Well, we were both sitting right in front of a beehive, a video that you sent here, and when I look at the bees, I mean, sometimes I just sit and I just watch them. Sometimes they seem to recognize that I'm there, and they kind of judge me whether or not I'm a terrorist or not. Uh, in general, they you can get right up to the beehive, and at what point would the bee say, "I think you're an enemy. I'm coming at you"?
Nothing physically, so I may go what I jokingly call a little woohoo here, but just so you know, so I don't use smokers of any kind material. So we're talking about bee smokers where you'd put different, and we use, when we did use them, it was natural mushrooms that I would harvest myself from the mountains. But we don't use smokers or suits, bee suits, for a reason. The bees don't attack, they never sting. And bees they're all frequency. So it's not even you physically in front blocking, because I've done that. I've sat in front of hives, blocked them. The bees will go around. It's really your energy, to be blunt, your feelings, your emotion, call it what you want. But ultimately, the scientists will say frequency or feelings, and that's exactly literally what the bees respond to. So if you're angry, anxious, upset, any of those, think non-biocompatible frequencies, sometimes they're called anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the bees respond to that and they'll come back thinking you're going to attack them.
Mm-hmm.
Just go out there open-minded, think, just love, be happy. You're just simply not going to be bothered. And I don't care if you block the entire entrance, and I've done it, they'll just walk all over you and not have a stinging issue.
Now, I've watched dozens of bee videos, and there are some people that don't wear a suit at all. Did you just say you don't wear a suit, or you do?
No, I don't wear a suit at all. I haven't had to in years, and I can walk out, open up the hives, and we have videos showing this. And anybody can do this, so it's not just a Derek special thing. It's just coming to the understanding and realizing, well, wait a minute. They don't want to hurt themselves because, as we talked about earlier, bees do die if they sting. They just don't want to, and just be in that happy state or feeling, call it what you want, and you won't have an issue. No, so we don't wear suits. In fact, I have 3 brand new suits that are in a package for people to take selfies in, because I give beekeeping classes at our store here in Washington State.
I just thought of an old song. That ain't me, babe. No, 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 that ain't me, babe. I'm going to be wearing my suit, babe, because I don't want to get stung in the head, babe.
Oh, funny.
How do you like that one? All right, hey, what we got here? Azur says, will a colony of bees protect the hive at all costs, even if you use smoke?
To a point, and then they'll abandon and start taking their. So it depends on how obtrusive it is. So if somebody walks up to a beehive or a bear or something and shoves it over, no, they won't just sit there. Some will fight the bear to try. Let's say go with the bear scenario and fight the bear, sting the bear if they can get to it. While the others will simply start gorging on honey, while other ones, the females, the worker bees, will actually start taking the young out, the brood or the eggs, and taking them to a new location. So it's all hands on deck. The drones, the boys, the tough guys, they'll go out there and get in a big battle and fight the bear and whatnot, and then everybody else will just kind of try and move house while that happens.
Wait a minute, man. I think a bee got in here. Whoa. Hey, I was no. My instinct is to smack them. At that point, when I get stung, it's all for everybody for theirself. At that point, somebody's going to die. But of course, they're going to die anyway. So hey, there's enough of them to replace them. All right, let's get to another question. Are there any health benefits on eating to eat a live bee? Can you eat bees? I mean, you eat everything else they do.
Wow. Okay, that's an interesting question. Never heard of that. Not that, maybe a slight amount of nutrition, but no. I mean, I guess if the bee's legs were packed with pollen, you'd get the pollen benefit. But I don't know if I've ever heard anybody eating bees, to be honest. No.
Oh, here's a great question. Dreamwalker says, "What are 3 things that the bees have told you telepathically?"
Oh, okay. And they do communicate that way, just like every living creature does. So one is, and one of the initial ones, believe it or not, and that brings us back into the whole Shungite aspect, which is where we come from. They basically communicated that their frequency. So I can actually hear tones and pulses and pressures. They call it tinnitus-like symptoms when frequencies start changing, and the bees are doing this. They can project a frequency in their environment. And if there's different ways of stating it, but if you're what's called an energy or, I guess that'd be the best way of saying energy sensitive, you can pick up on these subtle frequencies and energies and then assign it maybe an energy sign language communication. So you can start over time understanding these and pick them up, and then it'll get a whole lot more clear and turn into, well, think telepathy. But the bees say frequencies are harmful. And then we've had different tests where I walk out there with video recording from distances to see what was harmful. I'm trying to think if anything mentioned three things. So one was confirming the fact that frequencies are an issue, because early on, I don't know everything. So I thought, well, let's see. And it was, of course, a clear issue being the frequency. And then the others are, hornets. I had a hornet infestation or attack, and I thought, well, wait, I need to get involved. I need to go swat these hornets or wasps, whatever the deal was at the time. The bees said, and I was in a hyper mode thinking I need to save my Shungite bees before they're lost. And basically I was given an impression of relax, calm down, we have it. So I observed, and I actually got this on video, Daniel. So I observed the bees, and all of a sudden the bees in the beehive, and I had the whole entrance open. For those that don't know, a beehive, think of it, it's called a Langstroth beehive, the white boxes maybe you see in the field. There's about a 12-foot opening at the bottom of these, for those that don't know, where the bees can enter. Well, I thought, well, maybe I need to close this whole entrance and limit it. The bees came down, lined up when they told me they had it, all hands on deck, and basically blocked the whole entrance themselves, and then went on the whole wasp battle that we also talked about earlier, where they would fend them off kind of thing. And then another one, I was actually told about water. I was thinking, well, bees can fly, and here's a kind of a fun fact. Bees can travel up to 7 miles if they need to. Hopefully they don't have to get water and pollen and nectar. So hence why it'd be beneficial for all of us to put a bird bath or a bee bath in our yards to benefit the bees. They'd mentioned they wanted water, and I thought, oh, there's a river a few miles away. And then they'd start drinking from my glass, and it was one of those aha moments thinking, why make them fly so far when you can bring it closer? And then we started putting so what I'm getting at here is putting Shungite in the water, and this was a scientific study as well. It actually structures the water, makes it living water, or M-state water it's called, and the bees benefit from that as well, from living water.
Wow, living water. I like the sound of that. By the way, welcome in the live chat, Raul Sanchez, JMSS, Cactus Pat, and Zombie Apocalypse. Randy Holden, Rose back with us, and Y Guy all just logged in to our live chat. Join the others that are in there now. This is from Truth in Treasure. How does one buy Shungite?
Sure. And there's several ways. So again, it comes from one location on the planet, Karelia, Russia. So you want to make sure you get the legit stuff. And because there is knockoff being sold of Shungite on various marketplaces, of course, and there are tests to see if it's legit Shungite. And I actually put up a video on our YouTube channel where you can take one of those little flashlights, take off the end, put a piece of Shungite in the middle, turn it on. I do it with some drones and lasers and things. You can just do Shungite laser or drone test on YouTube and find that video. But you can get it, well, of course, we provide it at mysticalwares.net, and we do have a direct connection to Karelia, the mine itself, because they're aware of what we're doing with Shungite and the bees. The actual Russians are at the mine, and they've gifted us Shungite over the years in various forms, because we do gift it to beekeepers around the planet as well. So your best bet is, again, if you don't get it through us, just make sure you source and test it, because there is artificial, even if it's powder or nugget form out there. And again, so one little tip, Shungite is the only natural mineral on the planet, unrefined, that will conduct electricity. So gold, copper, silver, all these things will move electricity, but you have to refine it out of the ore to get it to a metal. Shungite, just the black rock, will do that all on its own. Hence why you can take a flashlight, take off the end, hit the button, and the light will come on or it won't. That means it's moving the electricity. So that's one test you can do.
So typically when I'm working in my beehives, I have my cell phone playing music. Two questions. One, is it bothering the bees with radio frequencies? And two, is there a particular music that bees like to listen to?
Great questions. The music is not bothering the bees. The cell phone pinging, the send and receive, they call it full duplex signals for those techie people out there. That is what does harm the bees. And generally, about 20 foot from the hive, they'll start to get annoyed as you get closer. So that's not too bad. The music won't harm them. But then the other answer, I mean, they may have a preference in music like we all do. So who knows on that one. But what will benefit them, or what they do like, would be 0.1 hertz, I'm being very specific, that's a frequency. So zero point 0.1 hertz is called a heart-brain coherence, and that's a loving or living frequency, and the bees generate that in their little buzz. So does a cat's purr. This is all scientific studies that have been done. I'm just kind of going over it quickly. But if you have a cat on you purring, not the sound of the purr, but the frequency behind it, will actually help mend bones faster in anything. That's just science fact. A bee, not the buzz, the sound, remember, the frequency will help you heal as well. And same with the bees. And a little on the fun fact side on that one is the bees aren't actually made physically to fly as well as they are or carry that body weight. They're actually partially levitating, if you can believe that. And it's a whole frequency. They're making a little bubble around themselves, removing part of the gravitational field, so then they float. And so they're actually a really unique little creature.
Well, absolutely. Did you say that cats can mend bones?
Yeah, the actual purr. So, and a lot of people don't know this, Daniel, but if you have, let's say you have a broken leg, you can go to your medical doctor and they'll prescribe you, I'm going to be specific again, prescribe you a device that you put on, let's say it was a broken arm, you put this little frequency device on your arm, you turn it on, it's going to be limited in uses so that you don't run to your neighbors and help let them use it. And it will generate a frequency, not a sound, a frequency that will promote healing in your bones, and you will heal hundreds of times faster.
Wow.
That same frequency is in a cat's purr. So yes, it would be beneficial to have Kitty on your lap purring away.
Wow.
That's going to generate that living frequency, and you'll heal yourself.
So
is what happens.
If you have two cats, you double the power.
That's extra strength. Yeah.
Extra
No,
strength.
it'd be the same. I'm just joking with you, but no, it's because it's a frequency, not a volume thing. No, you just two cats would widen the environment, so it would be beneficial. So a larger
the health field, the purr field would be widened. But now, there's kind of a joke about the bees, but it really, this joke now has a new meaning of truth to it because of what you said. But I've always heard this joke here that the bee, that scientists measured the wingspan of a bee and the amount of flaps, well, I guess you would say, I don't know what you call it, versus the mass. And they say scientifically and mathematically, that bee cannot lift its body with those wings. And of course, the joke is nobody told the bee that. And so the bee's able to do that. So, I mean, really, that's almost like a self-help thing. If the bee, nobody told the bee he couldn't, and so the bee does. But you just basically said the bee can't, and you just described why he can. So I think they both kind of complemented each other there.
Yeah. That's interesting. That's what they do. It's straight up a form of levitation. You can call it removing the gravitational field in their small. It's actually a little toroidal shape, like a donut with a hole in its shape that the bees suspend themselves in, affect that frequency, which is in an environment. So they can straight up levitate to a degree.
I heard a study that says bees have facial recognition. Now, as you know, as a beekeeper, bees, when they come out of the hive, many times they'll turn around and they'll look where they're at and take off that way. But I know sometimes when I have my mask on, of course I guess without a mask, the bee will kind of hover there and look at me and then go out. So do you agree with the result that they say they have facial recognition?
Oh, I know they do. They absolutely 100% they do. And they'll actually come out and do a little figure 8. If you look close enough, they'll come out and do a little figure 8, like a little infinity symbol. And that's exactly what they're doing. They're getting a spatial recognition of you, of the environment, and everything else before they go out. It's kind of an energy imprint is what they're doing as well. And so straight up on the physical sense, yes, they can identify individuals without a problem.
Now, another fun fact, you can correct me because you're like the master beekeeper here. But when a bee finds some pollen, they come back and they get on the comb and on the frames and they do a little dance to give directions. Is that true?
Yeah, they do. They'll do the little wiggle dance. They'll come back and give a general distance and location, but then there is a frequency tie-in that's not often talked about to where they'll just think GPS coordinates. So they'll tell you, over in this neighborhood, then they'll really refine it down. They can get another bee to the exact flower they just visited because there's also an infrared light signal coming off each flower telling the bees whether it's already been recently pollinated or not. So when the bees are flying, they're not just randomly hitting flowers. They're looking. It's going to have a different visual spectrum to them in infrared. and they'll know, oh, another bee has been here in the last couple hours. It's not ready to be, revisited yet.
Now, I read that that dance in directions is so sophisticated, it takes into the account where the sun has moved since that bee left where it found the pollen, and it calculates that into the directions. So it seems to me that bees not only are fascinating, but they're this almost mysterious level. And I notice you, and I've had my webs on this video a couple times, mystical wares. I guess that's something that you do in conjunction with that. But there does seem to be something mystical about the bee. But let's get to some more questions for you, Derek. This one here says, are the insects actually aliens who have, okay. Are the insects actually aliens who adapted to Earth climates? Did the aliens genetically engineer insects to infiltrate our world?
I guess that's a relative question. What's alien? It's all perspective at that point. I mean, you can call us that, I guess. So, but no, they were here. They're on many planets. So if we want to go big picture stuff, bee-type life forms are all over the place in this universe. We're not the green planet. There's a whole lot more than just us. They're just not telling you about. But no, yes, like many of us, some of us were transplanted here as well. So it's just an accumulation, a community. But the bees, when there's a planet, so this is kind of off the bee subject, that evolves to a certain level, the bees will just produce in that energy field. And there's certain life forms that will have that, plants, and then they kind of merge out of there. So when a environment is such that it needs and can sustain a bee-type population, it will appear out of the orgone. You can call it ether. It's the energy fields, etheric stem cells, lots of ways of putting it, but they will produce.
I have in my background a picture you sent me. It's a yellow meter next to an orange meter. What are we looking at?
Sure, that's an actual Geiger counter and then an EMF device that reads different frequency fields. So I was out there, that beehive, that's one of our early Shungite beehives. So that had been painted with, again, that Shungite powder mixture just on the exterior of the beehive. So for those looking to get into beekeeping, you never paint the inside of a beehive. You want raw wood. So we paint the exterior, and that's that Shungite Faraday cage effect. And then those are and we did readings before and after that to read different radiation levels. Because again, the scientific studies have been done that Shungite has an effect on rad particles, radiation. And in that environment, that was Gold Bar, Washington State. It was under some power lines, and there were other things nearby so radiation issues. So we were checking on the attenuation effects of it, and it was showing no radiation and no harmful EMF, any frequencies.
All right, let's get to another question here. It says, will the Shungite save bees from the 5G network?
It will help, just like us. So we do have various Shungite products we make for our things like our cell phones and our Wi-Fi routers, because of course those are all non-biocompatible frequencies and they're harming humans just as much. So you do want Shungite around you, be it in jewelry form or we even make stickers of Shungite, things like that. But it does have an effect. So it's definitely beneficial and attenuates, but it's not going to block all the frequencies. So really you'd want to try and limit your exposure to frequencies regardless.
I saw somebody in the live chat said they're going to make some Shungite brownies. Now earlier you said that there's some health benefits to I don't know. You said chickens or somebody's eating them. Can you eat it?
Okay, well here's one of those things where I have to walk a fine line. So I'll tell you this: we make a Shungite honey. So we have the organic honey, and we add the Shungite to it. And yes, I have many individuals that have reported back, and I fed it to them, and I consume it myself as a supplement. So don't think as a sweetener. You're not going to want to take, and we're talking about the Shungite honey, let's say.
Okay.
So I add a small amount of the powder to the Shungite honey. You wouldn't want to necessarily spread it all over your toast in the morning or in your coffee as a sweetener. Think of it as a supplement. So a few drops, yes, you can add it to coffee, teas, and all of that, but a small amount because it works on the frequency level, and it does remove toxins and free radicals, but because it's not regulated by the FDA, it's one of those things, we're walking fine lines. I can't tell anybody what to do. But others that have reported back, including a couple medical doctors, have cured their own internal cancers eating the Shungite honey. And I have countless stories of dogs and cats, our own, and different clients that come in Mystical Wares, where we provide the honey, and then they're given for digestive issues, things like that, or even topically. It does have an effect on, and that's just not the beneficial effects of an organic honey that's not treated, but with the addition of the shungite. So it can be.
Now, see, I would ask right here, is there any known benefit for cooties 19? But sensors with algorithms are probably scanning the audio now, looking for somebody to say something, cure something, or regarding to that one issue. And it's like a legal thing. You can't even say it even if it was true because people don't want it to be true. So I guess I'll avoid that one. But I'm going to bring up a video. You can't see it. I'll just describe it to you. And let me get this up online here and just cue it up. This, and you sent me one, but this is going to be, well, I guess it's not going to be here. Where's it at? All right. Okay. One of my beehive swarms. So I'm going to play a swarm video, and then what I want to know is talk to us about why. Well, let's see if this is even going to play. I don't see it. Let me see where it is. I don't see it. Why is this not playing? Well, that's odd. Doesn't seem to be playing. Maybe it's in the wrong file. But anyway, just I guess here I'll just bring this one up. Back to flying again. Why do bees swarm, and should people be afraid of them?
Oh, sure. No, there's no reason to be afraid of them. And I actually capture swarms myself. My son and I did. And again, no smokers, no suits when we catch these swarms. So
Okay.
often bees typically will swarm or supersedure, they're called, or make a new colony when there's just not room in their house. So think about too many people or bees living in the beehive, and then they're going to have to spread out. So what they've done is generated another queen bee typically, and usually a few of them, and they'll make these queen bees. When the queens emerge, they'll start spreading their pheromones and fly away, and about 50% of the bees in that colony will swarm and follow that new queen, usually into a tree or an eave of a house or something like that. And that's when you should leave them alone because they're not there. Often we come out and let's say we see a swarm of bees under the eave. Well, they're not making a hive right there. They're just taking a break, relocating, resting kind of thing. They're going to move on in a matter of hours or within a day. So it's best to leave them alone. But they are just basically splitting, making a new colony, and then they'll reproduce off of that. And they'll go find a nook in a tree somewhere, or maybe somebody built a swarm trap that you can make out of a 5-gallon bucket with a lure in it, like some lemongrass scent. And then you can capture a live swarm and take it home and have your own bee colony. But no, they're not harmful.
When somebody sees a swarm, should they be afraid? Should they go running?
I would stay away from it. They're not going to come after you because they're not wanting to attack. There's a bee, 1 to 6 queen bees in the middle of that swarm. It's not always just one, literally, and they'll be about the size of a basketball. So I don't know if the video got up, but often a swarm will be approximately the size of a basketball when they settle on a branch or something else. And in the middle of that, there's actually let's call it a baseball-sized pocket that the queens are in, making decisions and where they're going to go. And at that time, there's other bees scouting out new locations, coming back, telling the queens, hey, I found a nook or a cranny over here. And then they'll talk about it and decide. Okay. But they're not staying where they're at.
All right. I think I got the video come up. Here it is. All right. So I have the video up. Basically, it's my own hive. I came home from work one day, and then as people were watching swarming, and they were doing exactly what you say. They're swarming around a tree. They actually went out for about 6 feet where I have a fruit tree right in front of the hive. And of course there was a big cloud. Now I've heard that when they do swarm in longer distances, they rotate in the skies. Do you agree with that, or how do you see it?
No, that's exactly what they do. They actually follow energy lines. So we call them lots of things, vortexes, ley lines, and actually, believe it or not, humans can generate these same energy lines if they focus enough, but they're following those. So it's almost like a wave in the water, and they'll just kind of fold themselves. It look like a dark cloud, sort of. No, they're actually following just energy waves, you can call it. And I can actually perceive these, and there's devices that you can actually take these readings with.
Yeah, so we actually captured that swarm, and we brushed them into a box, and we started a new hive. Now, they're not really making me a lot of honey, Derek, so what's the deal, man?
Yeah, and so you do have them in another hive, though. So what I would do is I would take one of your frames that already has honey in it from another hive, put it in there, and have them start working, outwards sort of thing. So give them one to start with and to promote it, and then they'll go from there, and then limit the entrance because you don't want them to have too big of a front door when they're starting a new hive. There's just too much heat transfer and things like that. But they should start generating unless they what was left is maybe the older queen that they're still waiting to replace. You never know what really left, the new queen or the old queen, unless you get in there and look, kind of thing.
Now these hives are near a power line. Is that bad for them? Does that mess them up?
We, mhm. Sorry, yeah, didn't mean to cut you off. No, we're doing studies like that ourselves under the high tension power lines as well with Shungite beehives. Yes, it has an effect. And I actually came across a physics study. I don't even know where it came across, but it got in front of me somehow and I read it. And I found out that those high tension power lines actually pull the rad, again, the rad or radiation particles from the sky or the environment down around them. So it would not be beneficial for those of us to buy that cheap land under the power lines
Oh, hey.
because, yep. So there's that. And they don't advertise that, of course. But so the bees under there are struggling more, but we're not having losses. We're having limited numbers and limited honey. So it
Okay.
has an effect.
I have in the background, I'm going to take us both out. It is the bees, they were told to lock down because the Cooties 19 is affecting beehives. So we got one bee, looks like he's carrying some toilet paper. Another bee got some hand sanitizer, and one's got some Clorox wipes, and another one's got some whiskey. Sounds to me like these bees are really prepared for a lockdown. Is there anything about the bee that say honey in general that you know specifically cures ailments? And we'll leave the Cooties 19 out of it.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I'll put it this way, and I'll just be vague because it works. Any organic, untreated, again, I'm being specific, so raw, bee product, be it the honey, the propolis, or something like that, will boost your immune system that will have an effect on any of these dramas or viruses that are out there and things like that. So it's all about us. And it will boost your own energy field. They call it your orgone field, like you're mentioning orgone devices. Orgone's just the name for the invisible energy around us. They call chi, prana, your aura, lots of ways of stating it. But that is your outer defense, your energy field. And yes, natural organic bee products boost that frequency. That's your first line of defense. Think screen door. So yes, it would be beneficial on anything we're talking about.
There is also something called bee sting therapy, and I've heard claims that people get bee stings for arthritis. Have you heard that?
I have, and it's actually so the therapy, and yes, they can sting. They'll take the bees, place them on you in certain areas, and the bees will sting, and it will help with inflammation and all sorts of other immune boosting ways.
Okay. Well, okay.
Yeah.
True story, because we got people buying our honey all the time and they ask questions about bees, you know. So I thought that eventually I'm going to get somebody who wants some bee sting therapy. So I decided I was going to go out there, capture a bee, bring it in my house, and put it on my leg, you know, in a contained thing, and cause it to sting me, so I would know how that all goes. So I went out there, I got me a bee, actually in a queen cage. So I had to be in there, and I'm listening to it, and it's going, zzz, okay, that's fine. By the time I got in the house, it was going, zzz. I'm thinking, whoa, get the hell away from me. There's no way I'm going to let that bee sting me now. See, I would have let him sting me when he's going, zzz. But by the time I got him in the house, he's going, zzz. I was like, wow, that dude's going to terrorize me, man. I had to set him free. So that was the end of my bee therapy adventure right there. All right, let's get to another question. Plower says, Derek, do bees use their antennas to communicate?
Not to a degree they do, but really it's a whole frequency thing and movement. It's not even a whole lot of visual, believe it or not. So it's energy. They work on many energy forms that we call feelings and subtle energies and things like that as humans, but not a whole lot. It's more of a think antenna to perceive their environment. It's more of a receiver than a transmitter if we're talking about their antenna. So it's different ways.
Okay. Another question. Do bees sleep?
Oh, they do. Yes, they'll sleep, and they'll sleep for moments during the day. And that's also, so in the middle of a beehive, those white boxes, the Langstroth ones we're talking about, the actual brood is in the very middle of usually about 10 frames of honey. It can go 8 to 10, of course, for those that aren't aware. And then in the middle of those frames, think the virtual middle, or where the brood or the eggs are laid. And that's where it's kept extremely warm in there. And then the bees will rotate through, sleeping on the outside. And when they're on the inside, they'll kind of shake or do that buzz, which generates that warmth during the night. But they'll walk on the outside and sleep for moments.
There's this crazy Russian who immigrated to the United States who promotes and gives plans out for horizontal hives. Have you ever built one, and do they work?
They do, and we're going to build one here at the Mystical Wear store where it's called an observation hive. And the hive doesn't so much matter on the layout, it's more about the thickness of it. So horizontal ones, you can think so stacking, going, there's lots of ways, but you can do them in hexagon shaped logs or stack them above each other. So I'm going to do it in think a door, but a plexiglass door where the frames are stacked one on top of each other so you can actually observe. And that's not a problem. And the bees don't mind being observed, but it's just the warmth is really what you want. So the thickness of the walls, and the same with the Langstroth beehives, you want a thicker one if you can. That way you don't have to wrap them during winter. But no, they'll take to anything. They'll live in a 5-gallon bucket as long as you give them the right other environments in that area.
But isn't it by nature the horizontal hives have thicker wood around them anyway?
They do, yes, they usually will.
And crazy Russians, man. All right, let's get to this question here. Do bees have good vision?
They have excellent vision. I mean, you need to actually, and they can identify me. And I know for those of you that aren't watching video, so I have this, relatively long white beard, so I'm pretty identifiable. And even without that, the bees could tell as well. No, they have no problem on the visual sense. But again, even that, they're tying in frequency and energy just like we are. So we're not just, observing somebody with our eyes. We're feeling them as well. And,
okay. Are you a lost member of ZZ Top?
Yeah, I was the one that was never invited.
That was from me, by the way. Doreen says, is there a king bee? We're all hearing about the queen bee. Is there a king around in there?
Oh, no, this would make all the ladies happy. Why do you need a queen or a king? No, you got the queen. The girls are in charge. They know what's going on. And here's another fun fact is probably not so much fun for us guys, but in the winter when it starts, is of course, already, Daniel, all the drones, the boys are, let's just say, offed or removed from the hive or the colony because they're, useless eaters during the winter time. There's not much happening. So the girls kick them all out and only the worker bees, the females, last throughout the wintertime, and then they'll regenerate their males at the end.
Bees are swarming me. Bees are swarming.
I'm wondering.
They're swarming me again, man. Now, that's kind of funny you mentioned that because I was going to bring that up. The beehive kind of mirrors some parts of society because those drones, they're not married. And all they do is hang around at the entrance. They wait for a good-looking gal to come by, and they're going to bang her. And that's all they do. They bang and eat. So, and then, of course, they don't produce give anything to society. They don't contribute anything to society. All right, let's get to this here. Did Shakespeare raise bees to be or not to be?
Good question. I don't know the answer to that one.
All right. That just went out of picture there. Okay, another question comes up for you. Tammy Hall says, do bees go nuts when you mow around them?
Oh, they do, because these motors, and it's not even the noise, it's actually again, frequency or vibration that comes off of that motor. It's not even the exhaust. No, they wouldn't like the exhaust regardless if it was around their hive, but it's the EMF, the electromagnetic frequency, the fields that are coming off that motor and your hair dryer or your toaster. All these different little motors and electrical devices have these non-biocompatible frequencies. So yes, it's like really disruptive energy and noises coming at them. That's what antagonizes them, not the sound, not the fact the grass or somebody's mowing over their dandelions or something like that, of course. It's the frequency. So yes, it's very disruptive.
Well, here's what I found about it. And by the way, what I'm going to play in our background here is me installing bee packages. So that's going to be playing in the background. But here's what I found, Derek. When I mow around them, they seem to be pretty docile. I'll mow right in front of them, and then a sort of a cloud of bees will kind of like dissipate with me. They never really attack me. But if I use a weed whacker around them beehives, that's a frequency they do not like. Spock, do you understand? They don't like that weed whacker one bit.
I've had the same experience. Chainsaws, weed whackers. It's odd. I don't know why, but the smaller the engine, maybe it's a higher pitch frequency or something. I don't know. It's for another person to answer. But yes, those smaller ones like that will have a huge effect on the bees. Mm-hmm. It's just a more obtrusive sound to them.
By the way, people, that's me in the bee suit installing some bee packages. Is how you can get bees. Somebody's always saying, Derek, how can you start bees? Well, bee packages is the best way that I know of. But of course, this year we added some nukes, and I know you make some nukes. So for a new beekeeper, is it better to give them a nuke or to have them install a package?
Probably the Nook because you're going to get those 5 frames. So what we're basically talking about for those that don't know, think a half of a beehive, maybe approximately 5 frames of honeycomb and brood on there, and you just pre-insert that in an empty hive with some blank ones. So that's the best way, and generally those do come with a queen. So you got that all-in-one starter kit, and then you rotate out those frames as your colony expands to remove hopefully chemically treated frames or just older ones, because often they'll give you the older ones with the nooks, of course. Or the other option was capturing a swarm by a nearby river or creek with a 5-gallon it's called a trap, a bee trap.
I've tried the bee trap with the lemongrass. Never got one. I've tried them on my lot's about 3.8 acres, so it's pretty far away from my hives. I never got one. But have you been pretty successful about finding them?
You can be, but there's a little more to it. So it would be more beneficial if you're near running water, because of course there's moving electrons in the water. So the bees will generally follow those energy lines, and then pre-chum these little bee traps with some wax if you already haven't, in addition to the lemongrass. That way they've already, think a full pantry when they move in. How nice would you and I like it if we had an apartment full of food already, kind of thing. So it'll be more beneficial and encouraging them to go there by adding the wax.
By the way, everybody, this video playing back here, that's buried deep in my YouTube channel, because mainly it's just show stuff, but out of the blue, I just decided to put it up on YouTube. We're getting ready to extract honey tomorrow. And is it best to smoke them or not smoke them when you're getting ready to rob them?
Well, probably if you're going to be doing that for extracting the honey, because of course you don't want to lose bees, you don't want as less damage as possible. So a little natural smoke. So again, I actually climb the mountains here and harvest turkey tail mushrooms, reishi mushrooms, just different mushrooms, dry them, put them in there rather than a ink or glue filled cardboard or paper, which is often used, which has the chemicals. That's just going to piss off the bees. So get these natural smokes, do that when you're extracting, and yes, that would be beneficial. And then they'll lower down from that upper box for those that know what we're talking about, so you can extract the frames.
Now, we've been talking about some nice bees, but Derek, one season we had bees that were so mean. I thought here in Indiana, we've got the first case of Africanized bees, man. So I called in my master beekeeper buddy. I said, man, you got to check this out. I said, I can't go anywhere near this hive. When I get home, they're waiting for me. So I don't mean to scare the crap out of people who's thinking, hey, I'm going to raise bees. But now I'm telling you a horror story. These bees were so mean and aggressive that I had to call them in. And so I'm thinking, okay, well, the master beekeeper, he knows what he's doing, right? So he's going to come over here and get in there and get the queen out, because as you know, how the queen is, how is everybody is. So she mean old bitch in there, you know what I'm saying? Just gnarly as hell. And so he starts taking apart, and these bees just come out in the clouds. He starts running. I said, what the hell? The master bee guy is running, so I'm running with him, man. We got this cloud of bees following after us a quarter mile. They would not relent, man. We're running. He was convinced they were Africanized, so we went back and got some bees, put them in an alcohol jar. We sent them to 2 universities to see, but they weren't. They were mean. And I'm not even going to tell you. I have to tell you off there. I'm not going to tell you how I did destroy that hive. I didn't know what else to do, and it wasn't a pretty sight, man. So may the bees rest in peace. But 50,000 of them didn't make it.
Yeah, like you were saying, you're alluding to the genetics. Of course, that's it. So if the queen, stays her, and she's so strong that she generates a colony that large, 50,000 bees is about an average colony. That's a pretty good sized colony, of course, for those that don't know. So yes, those genetics, much like our families, they pass on in the same personality traits. So yeah, you could have had some angry bees.
Yeah, we definitely had some angry.
Africanized, yeah.
Definitely. Doreen says, will bees take over the planet?
Well, they won't take over the planet, but they'll definitely benefit it, and they'll just even out the numbers. There's no overabundance of bees, meaning we can't have too many of them,
Hmm.
because it just the numbers work themselves out, and it's not like they're taking something that we see as ours anyway. Not that it would really work that way, but no, so I don't really see an issue with too many bees or taking over the planet or anything like that either.
Hmm. I saw on one of your videos, it seemed that the beehives were inside of a building and just the entry was maybe, I don't know, maybe I was looking at something wrong, but it looked like the entry points were out, but they were inside of a building. Is that something you made, or is that, do you know what I'm talking about?
It is. It's actually so I had a shop building. I live in Darrington, Washington, so in the middle of the mountains, out in the Cascade Mountains. So I actually had a bee shop. Think a shop building made aluminum sides. So I thought, well, what the heck? I got so many Shungite bees. So I cut little bee entrances in the outside wall. So when you enter the building, I shoved the beehives. I had 9 of them at once on just one side of the building. So the entrances were outside. And again, I mentioned the mountains because we get snow and inclement weather, bears, things like that, or raccoons and possums, all kinds of things that want that honey. Well, now if I turned one shop building into one massive beehive, so the boxes themselves are inside, I was good to go. And that actually worked out really well. So that is what that is, the side of a metal shop building. And I just cut entrances and shoved the beehives from the inside out there and worked fantastic.
Now, did they make it through the winter then?
They did, all of them with no problem, without additional, think foam wrap or bubble wrap
Hmm.
or hay wraps, depending on your environment, what you
Hmm.
use. But
Did
they did, and it kept it safe from predators.
what was the temperature inside the building? Was it heated?
It would fluctuate because the bees kept it warm themselves, so it stayed above 60 degrees.
Hmm.
So I never
Wow.
had freezing temperatures in there. I didn't really have a problem.
But this goes to an earlier question from Pony Red Rose 2000. Says, I heard bees really can't fly, but they use the power of magnetism to hoover. I think you addressed that in some way. And maybe you go over that again a little bit, how it is that you believe they do fly.
Oh, sure. Everything's just frequency or energy waves. And so when you find that comfortable medium or sweet spot, think between waves, you can kind of hover there. And it's a frequency thing. So the bees they're able to fly, but only to a degree. And if they didn't have that environmental frequency control to think even them out, they would just fly in circles and be randomly have hard to control themselves because of the tiny wings and the mass of their body. Sometimes they'd have no steering capability
Hmm.
except for that frequency field around them that I was mentioning. And they actually make a little toroidal form. It's called a donut shape in energy. So yes, it's invisible
Hmm.
around them, and they're just suspended in there. So a
Wow.
portion of their flying is levitation.
That sounds like alien. That sounds like reversed alien technology right there. That's all I'm saying. Maybe they were here first. Um, Now in China, I understand that there's so many bees that have been decimated that the Chinese people themselves pollinate fruit trees. Every single flower, they get up in ladders and they pollinate because there aren't enough bees because they kill them off with all their pollution and stuff. Is that likely to happen here in the United States?
I don't think so to that degree because of how bad their environment is in those certain provinces. And yes, they do. They'll actually climb up on tall ladders, like you're saying, and touch each flower with their own pollen and things. Here, we have a wider space, so more room, and hopefully we kind of clue in and learn from those other previous
Mm-hmm.
mistakes and don't get to that point.
Mm-hmm.
But I actually work with in the California almond fields. That's where many of the bees come from, and the nooks, the starter hives we were talking about earlier, come from. And they're actually using shungite on many of their beehives as well,
Mm-hmm.
trying to get that in and integrate or work out the chemicals as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think we're really going to reach that degree of issue here.
All right. What's the freeze temperature that will kill off the bees?
Well, anything under about 55 degrees, they start slowing down too much and they can't move, which is also that's that number I brought in earlier for the mason or carpenter bee. That's when they emerge. So all bees emerge in the spring about the 55 to 60 degree temperature mark, be it a mason bee or honeybee, and
Mm-hmm.
start their routine after that. So 55 to 60 degrees. Hopefully there's not a false spring start to where you get a fake week of warm weather and the bees all come out, emerge, and then they get caught out in the snow or cold. That's another issue. So right around that temperature range.
You may have said this already, but how did you discover shungite has such a beneficial effect?
Okay, well, that's where it's going to be a little bit out there. So again, I'm an individual that so they call us intuitives, psychics, things like that. So I communicate with others. To be completely blunt and honest, Daniel, I was told, and I thought, okay, little magic black rock, how much effect can this really have? But I was open enough to what people call their guides or spirit guides, and I just listened to input. I thought, well, let's try it, and I actually recorded the first video of me doing it taken, and it's on the Shungite Beehives website. I took out this little black rock that I had already known had an effect because of how I work in energies and whatnot. It just is what it was, and I knew it. But then I thought, well, let's try it. So I sat a piece of Shungite out by the bees, and about 95% of the bees, and I'm a pretty, woohoo guy, and I love animals and communicate and all of this, but I'm not so good that I convinced all the bees to go pose for this video. And that's just what they did. I sat the rock down, stood back, recorded the video on my phone, and 95% of the bees went over to the Shungite and grounded or earthed themselves. That's what scientists call it, earthing or grounding. It's just a removal of excess electrons, and that's what the bees needed. And then they just basically grounded themselves. We had no losses past that, and I was amazed, just as everybody else was, because I had no idea. And I thought, are you kidding me? All these bees ran over to this, I'm jokingly calling it a magic black rock, but they did. And then they healed themselves, and we had no losses from that point on. So I'm thinking, wow, what just happened? And it just kind of went from there.
Wow, that's kind of interesting because I was thinking about you, and well, I'm a beekeeper, but my moniker is the Cosmic Cowboy, and you're a beekeeper, and you're kind of the mystical wares guy, So mystical meets cosmic, man. I thought, wow, man, if you had a hat, who knows what would happen?
But you know what's funny, Daniel?
What's that?
My actually overall company that owns mysticalwares.net here is Cosmic Reality. That's the name of the company as well, Cosmic Reality. So that's kind of funny. We got a little tie in there as well.
Wow, that's called synchronicity, man. All right. Question: what places or climates don't have bees?
That would just be basically Antarctica would be the only place that doesn't have any bees as far as we know, sort of. Of course, because there's no plant life there of any consequence that would be enough for them to sustain themselves. But that's really it. All islands of any real size, bees travel up in the upper atmosphere just like spiders, believe it or not. They'll cross the whole planet in the upper atmosphere in these wind currents and all of a sudden come down and land. So you'll get bees, insects, birds, spiders, like I said, all over the place. So they're all over.
All right.
But they just won't stay if they come down in, Antarctica or something like that.
All right. What people are watching right now, I'm taking a walk through my apiary. That is, apiary is what we call multiple hives, right, Derek?
Yep, absolutely.
So I'm just kind of walking around. Thought people might want to see how I have my hive set up, and so I've got that video playing. And while that's going on, did I understand that they found crystallized honey in the pyramids, and they liquefied it?
Isn't that crazy? They found it actually 8,000-year-old honey in a mummy that they reconstituted, which is and it's actually edible and is still as good as it was the day it was put there because it just crystallizes. So only raw, for those that don't know, only organic or raw honey that's been unpasteurized, not cooked over 90 some odd degrees, will crystallize or harden. And that's a good thing, by the way. So if it hardens, you know that it's not high fructose corn syrup, and you probably didn't get it in some plastic bear off of Walmart's shelf. So then you have good honey.
And then let me put this up here. Now we're going to watch a little bit of slow-mo bees in action hanging from my feeder. My hummingbird feeders, I came out today and they were swarming with bees. Derek, that tells me that they are starving.
Yeah, and I'll tell you one thing you can add to that, Daniel, is putting some Shungite nuggets in your hummingbird feeder. And again, it's all science. It structures that water or that sugar water, whatever mixture you have in there. Again, it makes it more biocompatible for not just the hummingbirds, but the bees. So you're going to have to refill that guy probably twice as fast if you add the Shungite.
Well, yeah, I'm going to put some Shungite in there, man. We thought, well, wait a minute. What if I have a hummingbird come there too? He going to get some Shungite too?
I'll tell you what, now that's funny you mentioned that because on our channel on YouTube as well, I have a photo, and actually I think it's a video, of our bird bath with Shungite nuggets in it, bees standing on the nuggets drinking, a hummingbird drinking from the same bird bath, and I'm not done, a wasp drinking, and then our cat jumped up there. So we're talking the whole chain of life on one bird bath, drinking from the same Shungite water, and they should have all, the deal, attacking each other on one level or another.
Hmm.
And that was a pretty amazing. I'm pretty sure it's a video,
Hmm.
but at least have the
Yeah.
photo of it still doing just that. No, they
Yeah.
get along around it.
And I think like right, the video I'm showing now, I'm like a foot away from this feeder. So I've developed, I'm not scared of bees that way out in the open like that, But like I say, when I open up the hive and they know I'm robbing them, then I'm going to be having a bee suit on, Derek. So, but man, I got to work to your level. So anyway, all right, now I'm going to show my chicken coop. Well, since we're talking about nature and stuff, you can see the video, the whole video. I'll get out of the way. This chicken coop we built. We have lots of sunflowers planted, Derek, and of course we get bees getting the pollen off of those. It's always fun because they got to dig down deep to get to them. And everybody's looking at some of my property here where my chicken coop and sunflowers. But we planted butterfly bushes, bee balm, locust trees. We try to make sure whatever we plant is either good for bees, butterflies, or hummingbirds, or food because we got raspberries, blackberries, and such like that. So we don't plant anything that isn't beneficial to the bees or to humans. So do you do that type of thing too?
Oh, that's absolutely, and I'm so glad you mentioned that because you talked about clover earlier, and of course, so people think clover and dandelions are weeds. No, dandelions are one of the most medicinal plants on this planet, from the flowers to the leaves to the roots, and yes, they're actually one of the best bee foods on the planet. So we leave all those. Actually, I plant dandelions, and they're actually a medicinal tea as well for
Mm-hmm.
humans.
Mm-hmm.
The dandelion plant I'm talking about, but no, we actually encourage those in our yards and leave it all for that reason, for the bees.
Mm-hmm. Uh, Dreamwalker says, "Do you ever feel bad when you take the honey?"
No, I don't because we take the excess honey. We have such strong beehives due to, again, one of the benefits of Shungite, that we have just such a plethora of honey that we stack the honey boxes year round. So there's a difference between brood and honey boxes for those that aren't beekeepers. So no, our bees make enough honey to where they have enough to carry themselves through the winter. So ultimately, if you're going to take honey from a bee or a bee colony, you want to make sure they have enough honey to sustain themselves until next year without artificial feeding. So if you can get to that point, and it's a different number for everybody in a different environment, depending on your winter and size of the hive. But no, if you do it right, you're not actually stealing, it's the excess, and you've given them enough backstock.
You're not actually stealing.
Yeah.
I call it stealing. And I don't mind. And the reason I don't mind is because I'm thinking, hey, I give y'all a house. I give you get I give you food. I'm planting stuff for you, but y'all got to pay rent. And so I just extract my payment in honey because that's all I got.
There you go. Well, you give them enough room. They've got enough rooms or a big enough pantry to put enough honey. They can share.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Now,
it doesn't affect them at all as long as they have enough.
of course, I just love sunflowers. Not only the bees get the pollen off of it, but we save the seeds for cardinals during the winter time too. So, but I think we have a tendency to take a little bit more honey than, I mean, I charge a little bit of interest on that. So, so that we do get an adequate amount of honey from there. How many times a year do you extract from the same hive? Once or twice?
Generally just once, but I also don't generally sell the honey too much. We're more about demoing and this and that. So it really depends on the beekeeper or the apiary, like you're saying. So if it's a honey business, that's one thing, where ours are more educational or think super procedure. So spreading the hives out, cutting them in half and sharing them, sort of thing. So basically once a year, and you can average about 5 gallons of honey from a beehive without any problems in this area with our hives. Again,
Mm-hmm.
everything's relative,
Mm-hmm.
so it differs everywhere.
Now, I've heard there's a big debate out there. Some people say locust honey is the best honey. Do you know what the best flavored honey is out there?
Well, I guess flavored, again, that's going to be, I guess, relative. I'm not sure if I know what locust honey is. There's different medicinal honeys, the manukas, the clover honeys. So it's all going to be dependent on your environment. As long as it's a raw, organic honey, and it's not going to be over flavored unless you're just, again, in that. So the almond, the bees down in California, the almond fields, well, they're just hitting almond trees. So they're going to have a tendency for that flavor. But if it's your backyard bees, They can go up to 7 miles away, so they're going to get just a huge variety of
Two, and
flavors of pollen.
and I think there's another one called Tupelo. So it does seem to be regional, where people say they got the best honey. But let me get a little bit cosmic on you here. Um, I think you mentioned in the first hour, sort of framed the bees in sort of an evolutionary term. But as we discussed the bees, the different things, the propolis, the pollen, the royal jelly, the honey, the wax, the facial recognition, how they fly, how do they give directions. I mean, this thing is like nothing else on the planet. To me, I'm seeing design. Are you sure it's an evolutionary thing, or is the bee designed with these attributes and capabilities?
Oh, I think absolutely the bees, much like us, were designed for their environment, and then we slowly modify after that. But no, they were designed. They were brought here. So again, when we get into the cosmic discussion here, no, they were brought in. Many different species brought in from different groups of entities for different reasons, just like us. So it's a whole combination there.
Okay, so are you sort of inferring that alien species brought the bees here, and I would be sort of taking another side that perhaps a designer an intellect designed them, that maybe.
It did both actually, and then there's actually a energetic blueprint in the environment that when a bee, and they actually do this in pyramids in Russia, and you can do it anywhere, it doesn't have to be Russia, but you can make a pyramid of such design and shape, put a plant in it or your person, it's going to affect your energy field, and you'll I guess we'll say revert to the best you or energy shape. So bees modify that way. So the answer is yes, some were brought in, straight up brought in by ETs and modified here. So on all levels, yes, they've been mucked with.
Of course, when I refer to design, I'm probably going to be referring to a designer, somebody who has such intellect and knowledge and capability to create something. That's I think that's where I'm going to have to leave that there. Somebody got this question here, says, "Oh, I don't know if it's to you or me, but when was the last time you were stung by a bee?"
It was an intentional sting on both parts, and it was directly above my eyes in what they would call the third eye area, and that ties into when we were talking a little bit about bee sting therapy. We didn't get into this part, so I'll say it was about, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago now, and it was a bee that left the hive, did that little infinity sign, that figure 8 in the air, and immediately just launched straight right between my eyes on that third eye spot, it's called, your pineal gland connection, and stung me right there before I could even blink an eye. And then the effects and stories after that, I could go on for a long time, but it was an intentional thing from the bee, and it had a huge effect. But it wasn't a disruptive sting, meaning I was getting in their hives, moving stuff around. So it wasn't an aggression thing. It was I think, a beneficial sting. We can put it that way, energetically.
Somebody in the live chat said, "Daniel, just tell him you're a Christian cowboy." I think you might have got that from the way I was talking. I kind of feel like you know that, and we're still friends, so I think we're okay. We're making progress. Right. But hey, we're getting near the end of the broadcast. I want to do something right here. For all those watching the program, watching Derek Condon and I talk about bees and the marvelous things they do, is there anybody that's watching feels like they might want to look into keeping bees in the future? So if anybody say just yes or hell no. Now, as far as my sting, by the way, Derek, I'll tell you what real fear is. Okay, I told you about the swarm, but there was something even more fearful than that angry beehive. Okay, so I got my suit on, their mask. And I'll say, oh, here's a little bee walking across the mask. Then I realized I was looking at the bee's wings. Now, you and I know that he's not walking upside down. He was inside the mask. That's why I saw his wings. That's the scariest thing imaginable when you've got a bee inside your bee mask, man. I went running. So that's pure fear.
It is. I agree with you. It is. Because you can't, how difficult, for those that don't know, it's not the quickest thing to get in one of those bee suits or masks or a hood. So you're not going to get out of it that fast either.
No.
And if it's around your face, yeah, I feel you.
So I saw those wings, and I said, nah, I'm not supposed to be seeing that there. Oh, here's a question. Can you record cats meowing and the sounds of bees and get the same effect?
You can, because it's a frequency, and believe it or not, you don't even have to play it. So let's say you did a recording of your cat's purr or downloaded one frequencies of bees, and you can actually put that on a CD-ROM. Don't put it in your player, just set it down on the desk or say, it's all frequency. You can actually put a glass of water on it, and to go a little bit more crazy, you can write the word love or healed on a piece of paper, put your glass of water over that, and it will structure it just like that recording of a bee or a cat will do. It's all frequency. It's quantum entanglement. We all affect each other.
Uh, we in the first hour we briefly hit chemtrails and their effect on bees, but now the airlines are basically just shut down. And I don't know what your area looks like, but there's rarely ever any chemtrails anymore. So now I'm looking like this Cooties Night thing really kind of worked out for the bees.
No, yeah, it sure didn't hurt them from that perspective, I guess you can say. Yeah, they weren't going to get rid of the bees with the chemtrails anyway. I don't think that was the big plan. Definitely had an effect, absolutely harmful on all living organisms, but they weren't going to get rid of the bees with that anyway. But yeah, the bees are much more strong and in numbers because they've stopped a lot of that. So that's one good result.
All right, somebody said in the live chat, they said, I might get bees if I lived in a better location. And I don't know that location has a lot to do with it. Over time, you meet, as a beekeeper, I'm sure you met beekeepers that I've seen beekeepers who have beehives on their back porch. And occasionally bees fly in the house, but generally they don't because that's not where they want to go. It's like they don't really bother. So you can have them right there. And as long as you're not getting in them, they don't pay you no mind.
No, you can have them on the roof of your house. I've even, so I have what's called a 3D printer. I've even 3D printed mini beehives. And then you can have bees live in there on your back deck or something. Even if you're in an apartment, you just have that little 10-foot by 4-foot patio thing. You can put a mini beehive on there, and you're going to benefit. And so will your neighbors.
Mm-hmm. Well, Derek, we're right here at the end of the broadcast. Anything you'd like to say about your website, your Shungite, anything, you go ahead.
Oh, sure. No, I appreciate that, Daniel. Yeah, we can, and we have lots of information. So we're all about sharing this information and gifting Shungite nuggets and powder to beekeepers worldwide so we all benefit. And we have a lot of this information on mysticalwares.net website. Lots of free videos, like you mentioned. And we're all about, benefiting the environment and all of us. So we provide all this information for free. And I just, would encourage others to give it a try, regardless of how, interesting or out there this might sound, but there is science behind it, and it will benefit.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thanks for coming in. Joey Splash says, thanks, Derek, for coming on the program. Derek, it's been a lot of fun to have you on. I've learned quite a bit. Hopefully other people have learned a lot about bees and have more respect for them. Stop using pesticides and killing your crabgrass and your dandelions. I'm sure they know that now. But hey, can we have you on the show again sometime?
Oh, I would love it. I appreciate that, Daniel. Thank you very much.
How'd you like being on this broadcast? It may have been different from some of the others you used to.
Actually, I really enjoyed it a lot because it's so interactive and the questions are coming back and forth. I really enjoyed it a lot. Yeah. Thank you.
You got to watch the replay after we edit because you're probably sick of looking at this green screen. But man, it's not green in our world and in our dimension, man. There's all kinds of stuff going on back here.
All kinds of stuff happening.
Yeah. All right, Derek, I appreciate you coming on the show. Be careful.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Daniel.
Right,
I appreciate you having me.
All right, you bet. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
All right.